Clara was legally married to David, but emotionally, she came second. While she played the role of the loyal, patient wife, David spoiled his bestie Linda with luxury gifts and affection Clara never received. Clara endured the humiliation in silence, until a tragic boat accident forced David to choose between saving his pregnant wife or the woman he always prioritized. Thank you for joining Frankie Stories. Witness Clara's journey to regain her marriage that was stolen from her. From the outside, Clara's marriage looked like the kind people prayed for. David was confident, successful, and generous with his smile, the sort of man relatives bragged about at family gatherings. Clara stood beside him like a quiet trophy, well-dressed, soft-spoken, and endlessly accommodating. She remembered birthdays, cooked meals that waited warm on the stove, and rearranged her life around his schedule without complaint. Neighbors often told her how lucky she was, how blessed. Clara learned to accept the praise with a gentle smile, even when it felt undeserved. She believed love was proven through endurance, through the quiet acts no one applauded. If marriage required patience, then she would master patience until it became her second skin. But inside the walls of their home, something vital was missing. David was there, yet never fully present. His phone buzzed constantly, always turned face down, always answered with quick smiles and excuses. Conversations ended before they truly began, his attention drifting elsewhere as if Clara's words were background noise. At night, she lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering how loneliness could exist so loudly in a shared bed. She questioned herself more than she questioned him, telling herself she was asking for too much, that marriage was not meant to be thrilling forever. Still, an ache settled deep in her chest, quiet but persistent, whispering that she was loved in theory but not in practice. And Clara, determined to be a good wife, chose not to listen. Linda entered Clara's life with a smile that was too confident to be innocent. David introduced her as his female best friend, a title he repeated so often it sounded rehearsed. He spoke of their history with pride, emphasizing how long they had known each other, how much they trusted one another. Clara nodded politely, convincing herself that adulthood meant accepting uncomfortable realities without complaint. Linda was friendly, warm, and effortlessly charming. She laughed loudly at David's jokes and finished his sentences without hesitation, as if she already knew how every thought of his ended. Clara noticed these things but trained herself not to react. Over time, the differences between them grew sharper. David never hesitated to spend money on Linda, designer bags, sparkling jewelry, the newest phones, gifts given without special occasions. When Clara asked for nothing, he praised her humility, calling her low maintenance as if it were a compliment. On her birthday, he handed her a blender and kissed her forehead, saying it would make life easier. Clara thanked him, even smiled, while something inside her cracked quietly. She began to understand that Linda received affection freely, while she earned approval through silence. Yet Clara said nothing. She told herself jealousy was childish and trust was maturity. If loving David meant swallowing her discomfort, then she would do it gracefully, believing that loyalty would eventually be rewarded. Clara discovered that silence could be a form of survival. Each time Linda's name slipped into conversations too easily, Clara trained her face to remain calm. When David stepped outside to answer late-night calls, she pretended to be asleep. When he canceled plans because Linda needed him, Clara rearranged her schedule without protest. She told herself that peace in a marriage was more valuable than being right. Speaking up might create tension, and tension might push David further away. So she swallowed every question, every doubt, every hurt, until they stacked inside her like unspoken prayers. As the months passed, Clara began to shrink within her own home. She laughed less, spoke softer, and learned to anticipate David's moods before he even walked through the door. Friends noticed she was quieter, thinner, more distant, but she brushed off their concerns with practiced smiles. At night, she placed her hand over her growing belly, the one secret joy David barely acknowledged. She whispered promises to her unborn child, vowing to be stronger for them both. Still, even as new life stirred inside her, Clara felt invisible. Love, she realized, was not supposed to feel like erasing yourself. Yet she remained silent, hoping that patience would eventually be seen as devotion and not weakness. Clara discovered she was pregnant on a quiet morning when the house was still. She stared at the test in disbelief, her hands trembling as hope rushed through her. This child, she believed, would bring them closer. When she told David, he smiled, kissed her cheek, and said they would talk about it later. The moment passed quickly, swallowed by phone calls and work emails. Days turned into weeks, and the excitement Clara carried alone began to feel heavy. David attended no appointments, asked no questions, and never placed a hand on her belly unless reminded. Linda, however, seemed more involved than the father himself. She called to check on Clara's health, sent messages filled with concern, and showed up unannounced with gifts for the baby. David praised Linda's thoughtfulness, calling her family. Clara watched from the sidelines, confused by the strange triangle forming around her pregnancy. While Linda shared jokes and memories with David, Clara sat quietly, wondering how her own child could feel like an afterthought. She realized then that motherhood would not fix what was broken. Love did not grow automatically with responsibility. And for the first time, Clara questioned whether staying silent was protecting her marriage or slowly destroying her. As Clara's pregnancy progressed, the cracks in her marriage grew impossible to ignore. Her body changed daily, carrying the weight of new life and unspoken fears. Yet David remained distant. He worked late more often, claiming deadlines and meetings that never seemed to end. When he was home, his attention belonged to his phone, his laughter reserved for messages Clara never saw. She told herself not to imagine things, but imagination required effort. Evidence appeared effortlessly. The warmth she needed was given freely to someone else. One evening, Clara overheard a conversation that finally stripped away her remaining illusions. David's voice drifted from the balcony, soft and intimate, a tone he no longer used with his wife. He spoke to Linda about fears, dreams, and frustrations he never shared at home. Clara stood frozen in the kitchen, one hand resting on her belly, the other gripping the counter to steady herself. In that moment, she understood the truth she had been avoiding. She was not David's emotional partner. She was the safe choice, the responsible one, while Linda was the one who truly held his heart. The realization hurt more than anger ever could. Yet Clara said nothing. She returned to the bedroom, lay beside him later that night, and cried silently, learning that love could exist without loyalty, and silence could no longer protect her. The invitation arrived on a morning Clara already felt uneasy. David announced they would be spending the weekend on a boat trip, just the three of them. He said it casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Linda had planned it, he explained, insisting that fresh air and water would be good for Clara and the baby. Clara forced a smile, though every instinct inside her resisted. The idea of being trapped on open water with the woman who had quietly replaced her felt less like a vacation and more like a test she was destined to fail. During the trip, the imbalance became painfully visible. David hovered around Linda, laughing easily, offering her his jacket when the wind grew cold. Clara sat wrapped in her own sweater, watching waves rise and fall, wondering how her life had come to this. The boat rocked gently beneath them, the sun shimmering on the water, but Clara felt no peace. Instead, an unshakable dread settled in her chest. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering reassurances to her unborn child. Something about this trip felt final, as if the sea itself was preparing to reveal truths David had spent years avoiding. The accident happened without warning. One moment, the water was calm, stretching endlessly under a pale sky, and the next, the boat lurched violently to one side. A loud crack split the air as something beneath them gave way, sending panic rushing through Clara's body. Linda screamed first, grabbing David's arm, while Clara struggled to keep her balance as the deck tilted dangerously. Water poured in faster than Clara could comprehend, soaking her clothes, chilling her skin, and tightening fear around her chest. Her heart pounded as she instinctively shielded her belly, terror clawing through her thoughts. This was not how she imagined fear. Not loud and dramatic, but sharp, breathless, and paralyzing. Chaos followed. David shouted instructions no one fully heard, his eyes darting between Linda and the rising water. Linda clung to him desperately, crying his name over and over, while Clara fought to steady herself as another wave slammed into the side of the boat. She slipped, her knee hitting the floor hard, pain shooting through her body. For a brief moment, she thought she might lose the baby. Panic surged, and she called out to David, her voice trembling but clear. He looked at her, then really looked, and Clara saw something that made her chest tighten. Not urgency, not instinctive protection, but hesitation. The boat groaned again, tilting further, and Clara realized with terrifying clarity that this moment would reveal everything words never had. The boat was sinking fast now, water rising to their knees as panic swallowed every remaining trace of calm. David stood frozen between the two women, his face pale, his breath shallow. Linda clung to him, crying uncontrollably, her fingers digging into his arm as if he were the last solid thing in a collapsing world. Clara, struggling to remain upright, pressed both hands to her belly, her mind racing with fear for the life growing inside her. She called David's name again, louder this time, desperation breaking through her practiced composure. This was the moment vows were meant for, the moment love was supposed to become instinct. But David did not move toward his wife. His eyes flickered between Clara and Linda, torn not by circumstance but by truth. In a heartbeat that felt endless, he chose. He wrapped his arm around Linda, pulling her toward the edge where a lifeboat floated nearby. Clara watched in stunned silence as realization struck harder than the icy water around her legs. This was not confusion. This was clarity. David helped Linda into safety, his voice gentle, reassuring, filled with the care Clara had begged for in silence for years. By the time he turned back, the water had risen higher, the distance between them no longer just physical. Clara felt tears mix with the seawater as the brutal truth settled in her chest. Love was not proven by vows spoken once, but by who you refuse to let drown. The water swallowed the boat with terrifying speed. Clara clung to the railing, her strength fading as the weight of the moment crushed her more than the rising sea. David's back was turned as he steadied Linda, whispering promises, ensuring her safety. Clara watched him from a distance that felt immeasurable, realizing that even now, he did not look back. Her heart broke in a way that felt final, as though something essential inside her had gone quiet. She was no longer afraid of dying. She was afraid of being forgotten, as a wife, as a mother, as someone who had loved too quietly. As the boat tipped further, Clara lost her grip and slipped into the cold water. Panic surged through her, instinct fighting despair as she struggled to stay afloat. Her body screamed in protest, exhaustion and pain threatening to pull her under. In those moments, she thought of her child, of the future she had hoped for, of the woman she had been before she learned to shrink herself for love. She fought not for David, not for the marriage, but for herself and the life inside her. And as darkness edged her vision, Clara made a silent vow. If she survived this, she would never again choose silence over her own worth. Clara drifted in and out of consciousness, the sea cradling her body with a cruel gentleness. Every movement felt heavy, as though the water itself was testing her will to live. Her limbs ached, her lungs burned, and yet her hands remained instinctively wrapped around her stomach, shielding the fragile life inside her. Images flashed through her mind, her wedding day, the vows she believed in, the countless nights she waited alone. None of them brought comfort. What kept her fighting was not love for David, but a growing resolve that surprised her. She refused to let this be the end of her story, refused to let a man's choice define the value of her life. Just when her strength began to fade completely, voices broke through the roar of the waves. Arms grabbed her, firm and urgent, pulling her from the water as she gasped for air. Rescue workers moved quickly, wrapping her in blankets, shouting questions she struggled to answer. As she was lifted onto another boat, Clara caught a glimpse of David in the distance. He was holding Linda, relief etched across his face. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, something shifted inside Clara. There was no anger, no pleading, no regret, only clarity. She understood then that survival was not just about breathing again. It was about awakening to the truth she had long denied. Some loves are meant to teach you when to let go, not when to hold on. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and unanswered questions. Clara lay in a narrow bed, her body weak but her mind painfully awake. Doctors confirmed the baby was still alive, a miracle wrapped in caution and strict instructions. As relief washed over her, it was quickly followed by grief, not for the accident, but for the marriage she finally understood had been over long before the boat sank. David arrived hours later, his clothes still damp, his face lined with exhaustion and guilt. He stood at the doorway, unsure whether he was welcome, and for the first time, Clara noticed how small he looked. When he tried to speak, the words tangled between apology and justification. He said he panicked. He said he thought Linda would drown faster. He said he planned to come back for Clara. She listened without interrupting, her hands resting calmly over her stomach. When he finished, Clara met his eyes and saw fear. Not of losing her, but of being seen clearly. She told him quietly that choices made in fear still revealed truth. Love, she said, moved instinctively without calculation. David had moved toward Linda. That was all she needed to know. As he left the room in silence, Clara felt something unexpected settle in her chest. Not pain, but peace. The truth had finally come ashore with her, and she was no longer drowning in it. Clara left the hospital days later with slow steps and a steady heart. Her body was still healing, but her mind felt clearer than it had in years. She did not argue with David or demand explanations beyond what had already been said. There was no dramatic confrontation, no raised voices, no shattered objects. Instead, she packed her things quietly, folding clothes with the same care she once used to hold their marriage together. Each item placed into her suitcase felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she had lost to patience and silence. David watched her from the doorway, confusion and regret written across his face. He asked where she would go, what would happen next, whether they could talk later. Clara answered calmly, telling him she needed space to raise her child in a place where love was not conditional. She did not accuse him of cruelty. She did not need to. His choice had spoken louder than any argument ever could. As she walked away, Clara realized strength did not always roar. Sometimes it simply closed the door and refused to return. For the first time in her life, she chose herself, not in anger, but in truth. Clara moved into a small apartment near the edge of the city, a quiet place filled with morning light and unfamiliar peace. At first, the silence felt strange, almost too loud, but gradually it became comforting. She began to notice things she had long ignored: the rhythm of her breath, the strength in her body, the steady reassurance of her baby's movements. Prenatal appointments became moments of empowerment rather than reminders of absence. Each heartbeat she heard felt like a promise that something good could grow even after betrayal. Clara started journaling, pouring years of swallowed words onto paper, discovering that her voice had not disappeared. It had only been waiting. News of David reached her through others. Linda stayed by his side, at least publicly, and their closeness no longer shocked Clara. What surprised her instead was how little it mattered. The anger she expected never fully arrived. In its place was clarity and a quiet resolve. She took a part-time job, began planning for motherhood on her own terms, and surrounded herself with people who saw her fully. Clara understood now that endurance without dignity was not love. The woman she was becoming was not defined by what she survived, but by what she refused to accept again. For the first time, her future felt like something she was building, not waiting for. Clara gave birth on a rainy morning, the kind that felt like cleansing rather than sorrow. As she held her baby for the first time, she felt a depth of love that needed no permission, No proof, no sacrifice of self. In that moment, every choice she had made, every silence, every tear, every step away, led her here. She named her child with intention, choosing a name that meant strength and renewal. This love was steady and unquestionable. It did not hesitate. It did not look elsewhere. It stayed. Months later, Clara stood by the sea again, this time with her child in her arms and solid ground beneath her feet. The memory of the sinking boat no longer haunted her. It reminded her. Love, she had learned, was revealed in moments of crisis, not comfort. David had made his choice and she had made hers. She had refused to let herself drown, in fear, in silence, in a marriage where she came second. As waves rolled in gently, Clara smiled, knowing she was no longer the side chick in her own life. She was the woman who survived, chose herself, and taught her child what real love looks like. Thank you for watching Frankie Stories. Please give us a like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, we love you.